Good morning. Welcome to the Celtic Way morning briefing live. It's Thursday, December the 22nd. Not long now, boys, till Santa comes, but there you have it. We are three amigos reassembled again. I'm Tony Haggerty at 𝘀𝗶𝘁𝗲 Twitter handle. You know that. And I'm joined today by Sean Martin at Sean Martin TCW and Aidan Macdonald at 𝘀𝗶𝘆, or the GOAT, as he prefers to be called these days, Sean. The predictions GOAT, World Cup predictions GOAT. Good morning, gentlemen. How are we?
Not bad, Tony. Yourself?
Yes, indeed, Aidan.
He's just smiling. He doesn't need to say anything, Tony. He's
to be honest, I think I said it the other day, Tony.
Tony.
After that intro, I'm absolutely superb.
Do you prefer Aidan, or do we call you the GOAT? It's up to yourself.
Whatever takes your fancy.
Call you wee Leo.
Wee Leo.
Call you wee Leo.
Baby Leo. Baby Leo.
I don't mind that, to be fair.
Yes, indeed. Now, it's the morning after the night before. Celtic beat Livingston 2-1, and we will come to that, ladies and gentlemen, in the fullness of time. I'll just direct you to the ticker tape running along the bottom. Got a wonderful deal for you. Merry Christmas deal, festive deal, and you can get 25% off the yearly subscription rate, which takes that to a wonderful £26. Or if you prefer, you can subscribe and you can enjoy 2 months of unlimited access to everything that's written on the website for the grand sum of £1. Ladies and gentlemen, what an offer that is. And all you have to do is hit the button, www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. That's www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. You can pay £1 for 2 months of unlimited access to everything that's written on the website, all sorts of stuff there, or you can get 25% off the yearly rate, which takes that to £26. Marvellous deal, isn't it, gentlemen? Sean and Aidan, there's all sorts of everybody on there, isn't there?
Yep, Christmas cracker. It's a Tony Haggerty festive, full of fun the day on that website, because it's your detailed player ratings, your post-match opinion piece, all the different things that you've done. So, yep, Tony Haggerty Christmas spectacular.
Choose your words a bit more carefully there, Sean. Spectacular, maybe. But yeah, there's some Tony Haggerty stuff on there. Yeah, you can read it.
Sure, there's plenty of people wanting you in their stocking for Christmas, Tony. Don't worry. Don't worry.
I believe so, Sean. Yes, indeed. Hopefully that is the case. Now, gentlemen, as we said, Celtic re-established their 9-point lead at the top. Shortest day I mentioned in the colour piece, Sean, but one of the longest nights of the season, I think, for the Celtic supporters. They didn't have make it hard for themselves, did they not?
I mean, in terms of performance, I thought it was good in the first half.
Yep.
Despite the concession at the end, the first half. Second half, I think Joe Hart probably called it when he said it just kind of wasn't there and it was difficult. And I think at times it was Celtic that made it difficult for themselves. Either way, it was not a vintage Ange Postecoglou Celtic performance, but it was certainly good enough on the night. I don't think there's any suggestion that it wasn't good enough in terms of to get the result. But obviously, that kind of thing that I'm always talking about the two boxes. Ange Postecoglou said himself after that the result was there, but the performance wasn't. And I think Joe Hart in particular was very much unhappy with the nature of that Livingston goal as well. Indeed.
Aidan, is that your takeaway from it, that the concession of the goal was very sloppy, wasn't it? Because at 2-0 the game really was, or should have been, dead and buried. The manager said that himself. They let Livingston back in, and Sean's always talking about clean sheets and keeping them, and that was an ideal opportunity last night to keep a clean sheet, because Livingston rarely threatened.
Yeah, it was disappointing to concede the goal, and it was quite sloppy. That just seemed to take the sort of momentum out of the game, even though there was still, a whole second half after that to come, and it was just before half time. After that, the game just seemed to die down a wee bit. But yeah, they've not been keeping as many clean sheets as I think a lot of fans would have liked this season, and the managers touched on that a couple of times as well, that they need to be a bit stronger defensively. So hopefully that's something they can work on.
Individual, Sean, I did my player ratings. Don't know if you agreed or disagreed, but you called it bang on with your 11 out of 11.
Yes, so does that mean I get the GOAT title then?
Yes, and your big call was Abada, and he didn't let him down. Yeah, I gave him a 9 because I thought he was terrific. I thought he deserved the goal as well, and we'll come to that later on. But I thought Abada stepped up to the plate last night. Thankfully, I think, and a couple others. I thought McGregor was steady. Cameron Carter-Vickers and Starfelt, for what they had to do, were decent, But yeah, I was very impressed with Liel Abada's performance, I have to say.
Don't disagree with anything you said there. I've picked out three. I think Anthony Ralston, first and foremost. I think even after clearly picking up an injury, he still was playing well. In fact, when I thought he was ready to go off the park, he rattled in a shot and nearly found the bottom corner, even though he was wincing in pain while he done it. And then he came back out for the second half, gave that a go for about 10 minutes or so, went off about 55 minutes. And in that 55 minutes, he managed to play what is now becoming, or must surely be becoming, a trademark through ball for 𝘀𝗀𝗏.
Yeah,
so I know you gave him a 7, and I think a 7 is probably accurate because he did only play 55 minutes. But I think if you took his performance and he stayed on for longer, I think he would have been an 8 probably.
Well, it would have been an 8 or a 9, Sean, because I thought, like Saturday, a lot of people thought he was off it, but he still played the pass of the match. A carbon copy of last night, which released 𝘀𝗏𝗏, Aidan, and that's. I thought those two in particular were linking up well. They seem to always do, actually, when the two of them play.
That second unit that I kind of. No, I don't mean that disrespectfully when I say that about Ralston and 𝘀𝗏𝗏 and even 𝘁𝗂𝗏, but they tend to be in depth wise, they tend to be the second choices, and they all play well together. So
you agree with that, Aidan? You impressed with those guys that we have mentioned so far?
Yeah, I thought they were all excellent, to be honest. I mean, 𝘀𝗏𝗏 really, in particular, a good contribution for him. Obviously, he puts the ball in. I know we'll go on to discuss the goals probably, but he puts the ball in. Obviously hits off the Livingston defender for the first goal. He then gets an assist for the second goal, and then obviously he got a goal that was chopped off as well. So another really good positive contribution for him, and he's came back really strong after the break. We also discussed at the start of the week how he was, despite not scoring or getting an assist against Aberdeen, he was really good, put in quite a few dangerous crosses and sort of brought a lot of intensity to Celtic when he came on, and he was excellent again. So it's really good to see him. Maybe that's him hitting another purple patch, because we know how good 𝘀𝗏𝗏's purple patches have been before. So
just in time for a derby, Aidan.
Yeah,
you know you wanted to say it. Tony, I think surely 𝘀𝗏𝗏, if nothing else, it's a shining example of, like being ready, making the most of your chance when there's rotation afoot. Because that's 2 in a row. That's one is a 45 minutes. Plays really well. Should have had an assist. Gets a start off the back of that, as he should have. Because I agreed when we were speaking about it the other day. I think probably 𝘁𝗱𝗏𝗏 would probably have started if 𝘀𝗏𝗏 didn't play as well as he did at 𝘁𝗀𝗏. Gets the start off the back of that, and is the team's best player in the next game. Penetrative dribbling was on point. He caused the own goal, as Aidan said. He set up 𝘀𝗀𝗏 for the second, and then he did grab a third, and as we'll come to shortly, it was disallowed. He was definitely the star man, Tony, and I think you were totally right to give him the 9.
Oh yeah, he was just involved in everything that was good about Celtic last night. And again, as you alluded to there, the manager's always saying that, isn't he? That guys who are not playing have to be ready at the drop of a hat to come on and perform. And I think 𝘀𝗏𝗏 is a shining light and an example of that isn't taking the huff that he's not in the team, accepts that there's going to be rotation, as all the players have to, because the manager tells them. Again, I'll go back to it. Listen to the manager, listen what he's saying. He's not telling you you're not going to play. You will feature at some point, Aidan. But when I pick you to do a service, you've got to do me a service. You have to come on and you have to give me a dilemma for the next game. You have to make me say, do you know what? Yellow jersey, you keep it, which is what he did with 𝘀𝗏𝗏 on Saturday. He was excellent in the second half. Sean called it and said he would put him in. And then afterwards, Sean, his after-match comments, he said there's probably going to be changes again for the St Johnstone game, which was quite telling. So that throws us all into disarray, picking a starting 11.
Well, there's no chance of we getting 11 at 11 at the weekend.
That's not the words we want to hear. But Aidan, that's what I want from Celtic players that have been rotated. I want them to come in and I want them to give the manager a headache. I want them to say, I'm still around, I'm still here, I'm bringing my A game.
Yeah, I mean, that's how you have a strong competitive squad, isn't it? You want all players that maybe aren't all involved or on the fringes to have that mentality. And 𝘀𝗏𝗏's taking his opportunity. Obviously, before the break, 𝘁𝗱𝗏𝗏, which was excellent. And I don't think it's unfair to say that if he didn't have that knock before the Aberdeen game, he probably would have started. So that kind of pushes everybody that's not starting in down the pecking order slightly. But obviously, he wasn't available. 𝘀𝗏𝗏 then comes on the sub, does really well, who then gets his start last night. So he's taking that opportunity, and it's a real positive, and you kind of ideally want that sort of mentality in that field in every position in the squad, because that's how your sort of list of players is strong throughout the season. But yeah, no, 𝘀𝗁𝗁, the way he's sort of kicked on in these last couple of games has been excellent.
Now, Sean, I mentioned in my piece as well that you flagged up at the start about the need for a third striker and this dominance that Celtic have in matches. And I was saying it was a kind of mirror image of the European campaign where there was dominance in matches, chances created, and they weren't taken. And you put up a comment from it saying that the European affliction can't be allowed to permeate the domestic scene because it will cost them at some point. There'll be a day when they won't score the goals, where the ball won't go in. And if they're creating chances, 33 shots at 𝘁𝗀𝗁, 1 goal, 23 last night, I believe, an own goal, and Kyogo's goal. In terms of chance conversion to chance ratio, the numbers aren't great, are they?
Without having the actual numbers to hand, it's more a perception, I think. Because they're obviously, you mentioned it in a piece, they're still the top scorers in the league. They're still by far the best goal difference. And you have another kind of sentence in there where you say, "Is it a concern?" Well, no, it's not a concern. But if it does cost Celtic points at one point, then it will be a concern. At that point, there'll be plenty of consternation from people at that stage. But I think most people that watch Celtic regularly have kind of made this observation in terms of certainly Europe. But domestic football, Ange said it himself numerous times this season that should have won by more, should have took more chances, all that kind of stuff. It's not cost them, apart from against St Mirren, it's not cost them. So there's very little fault you can find with the end product in terms of the end result. But I agree with you, if it does cost them points, and God forbid it costs them points at Ibrox, then you will find that people are ultra critical of it. But it won't be anything that anybody will be justifiably saying, well, we've said it before, because most people have said it before. Whether that means necessarily that they need a new striker or not, I suppose for me, I mean,
I'll leave that to the manager.
But I mean, that's all. That's an obvious response. But what were we going to debate if we just leave everything up to us? So, I mean, for me, Kyogo scored again, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
And it was a match winner. 𝘁𝗱𝗁𝗁 didn't do much when he came on, but then again, he wasn't on for long. Kyogo did miss a decent chance around the 30-minute mark, but then he also took the best chance that he got. So I get the narrative to an extent that clearly Celtic waste a lot of chances, but I'll come back to the kind of game time argument between 𝘁𝗁𝗁 and Kyogo that's kind of raging on. Signing another striker isn't going to clear that up. It's going to make it more difficult to keep everybody happy. Realistically then, if Celtic sign another striker, it's got to be somebody that's better than both of them, and clearly better than both of them, or you're just in the same predicament with a different name in the mix, no?
Yeah, well, that was my premise, Aidan, to the question I was going to ask you. I think one of the commenters has put it as well. Do we need a penalty box predator? Because Celtic fizzed a lot of ball across the 6-yard box last night, and the manager said it himself. They weren't making those runs, and it seemed to me like a thinly veiled dig at the strikers. I could be wrong in that, but he doesn't usually call them out, but he did say people weren't busting a gut to get there, and I don't know if he was aiming that at Kyogo, but there was a couple of times where I thought Kyogo could have made the same run he made for the 𝘁𝗁𝗁 goal, for the goal that turned out to be the winner, and didn't, because those balls were just begging to be put away, weren't they?
Yeah, they were, and I can understand why the manager was frustrated. Obviously, the second goal did come from exactly that, as you just mentioned there. Tony Ball fizzed across, and Kyogo gets on the end of it, which was quite reminiscent of the sort of goals he was scoring at the start of last season, actually, when I think about his goals, a couple of his goals against Dundee, when that game he got the hat-trick, obviously, so that was good to see that. But yeah, in terms of sort of balls in the box, whether sometimes maybe the crosses aren't the best, or the strikers weren't always in the best position, I do understand why the manager was a bit frustrated at that. Hopefully it's something that will improve a wee bit as the players are getting back into the swing of things. In terms of, do we need a penalty box striker? Obviously, I kind of viewed 𝘁𝗁𝗁 as exactly that, to be honest. I don't know, we kind of discussed the death at one point about the old one-touch finish, and that was, most of them were in the box, I'm pretty sure, so, or if not all of them last season were in the box, but I kind of had him down as that, but, maybe they feel the need to go in and get someone else who can fulfil it, but I would have thought 𝘁𝗁𝗁 was already potentially ticking the box of a penalty box striker in terms of that actual ability, even if he's maybe not been scoring as much this season, but his goal record's been all right. Some games he hasn't really been involved either, so...
I understand that.
I think he was talking about other players. I don't think he was
No,
trying to say to the strikers. I think he was saying.
I was playing devil's advocate there about the strikers or midfielders, because O'Reilly's still looking for his first goal of the season. He scored a few last season. I thought Jota's output last night was pretty limited. When he got the ball, he looked as if he could beat Nicky Devlin for fun, but didn't do it enough. And that's 2 games where I would say Jota's been out of sorts. I will use that phrase. I'm not saying he's been terrible or brutal, but he's been out of sorts. He's just not been at it, has he? And I don't think that can be allowed to continue, because you need everybody to be bang at it. And I'm not saying Celtic struggled last night, but it was kind of, a symptom of the fact that Jota wasn't bang on form. Thankfully, Abada was. And that was your outlet last night with Ralston and Abada. And then for 35 minutes, Ralston goes off and there was a lull. Again, Kyogo scored a cracking goal, but has not been exactly firing in all cylinders. Not been the Kyogo of old. Giakoumakis only gets 8 minutes. So there's a lot of things feeding into that. Hatate and O'Reilly were okay last night, but
I mean, they were trying. They were certainly trying the passes to unlock that Livingston backline. But ultimately, like, there was a comment here I'm going to throw up from Frank, who says the ongoing issue from now until May will be Ange's rigidity. Easy for me to say. With Ange ball as a concept and only providing for one single lone solitary striker up front against 10 defenders. And often a very static pedestrian midfield. I disagree with that characterisation of the midfield. I think they all 3 of them get about, and all 3 of them try and put in those that kind of passes to unlock the defence. But I also take issue with the one single lone solitary striker. Now, obviously, 4-3-3, it is one striker that starts. But as I keep saying, especially against a team like Livingston, you've got 8 players in the opposition half for most of the game. So I don't think it's very fair to say that there's a striker isolated. There's so many bodies. Is really what the problem is, rather than anything else. I don't think it's a lack of attacking players, because they're all in the opposition half. Yeah,
I agree. I take issue with that as well. I disagree with that. What Frank's saying there, Aidan, to be fair, but that's just my own personal opinion. What's your thoughts on that, Aidan?
Yeah, I always think that even though they might have struggled a wee bit last night, the midfield is usually one of the most sort of dynamic aspects of Celtic's team. I mean, you'll have games, particularly domestically, where they're sort of so far forward. Even somebody like 𝘀𝗶𝘁𝗄, for example, against Aberdeen, despite playing the number 6, spent most of the game in the Aberdeen half, which I know was relative to the tactics Aberdeen were playing. But yeah, I'd disagree with that comment, to be honest.
See, with this, there's credence to this. Tony Ralph Thompson saying Kyogo was important in keeping Livy penned in last night. Folk massively, this bit in particular, folk massively overreact every time he misses a chance, because I said yesterday to you, Tony, that statistically, remember I rhymed off both of their statistics from the start. Kyogo does obviously start the majority of games. He's got 32 goals in 55 games now, and it's the equivalent of about 40 full 90 minutes, the minutes equivalent. So, I mean, 32 goals and 40 full 90s is phenomenal. So is it just that because he is prone to missing a sitter, that sticks in people's heads a lot more?
I think his goal ratio is terrific, and I think the goal he scored last night was proved to be the winner was terrific. But he could have had 3 or 4 had he made those runs that the manager was saying with the balls that were fizzed across, and he also missed a sitter. And the Kyogo of old would have put that away in his sleep, would have lifted it over him, would have did what he did in the cup final, not even thought about it. So I just think that there's something with Kyogo just now that he's not firing on all cylinders, but he is still contributing, as the manager says, and he's contributing a lot in terms of dragging defenders around, and I see all that. But what you want him to do is to score goals, and he scored the winner last night. So I'm not having a go at him per se. I'm just trying to sort of see what the manager was saying in terms of, I think he was disappointed that Kyogo didn't get on the end of those ones that were driven across, and and others as well.
See, the kind of balls that they're pulling, they're either putting it across or pulling it back. I think Kyogo just picked the wrong one a couple of times, because everybody knows he likes to sometimes hang back, let other players run in front of him, and then he's in the space. And a couple of times, Hatate in particular last night chose to shoot instead of pulling it back to him when he was in space. So I think he was there, and that's kind of again why I don't think Andrew's really getting at him. I think it was more there was a lack of other players running beyond him, the likes of maybe Hatate himself, maybe O'Reilly. trying to get in there, maybe a bad running from the back in the way. Now, obviously, 𝘀𝗀𝗁 takes his fair share of that, because if you pick the wrong run, then you still pick the wrong run. But at the same time, as much as Ange was saying the balls were getting put into the right areas, sometimes the right area is cutting it back, because they've done that plenty as well. And I just think that they missed 𝘀𝗀𝗁 a couple of times last night, as much as he missed the run.
Aidan, I think it was a warning shot over the bow to 𝘀𝗀𝗁 and others like 𝘁𝗱𝗆 and O'Reilly, possibly Jota, and Abada as well, who likes to do that late run and coming in as well. So I think it was a kind of, it was, as I say, a warning shot over the bow to them all. They should be reading it a bit more and making those, because that's, he said himself, that's the way we play. It's no surprise that you get to the dead ball line and fizz those kind of balls across, is it?
No, it's not, because it's obviously a massive part of Celtic's game in terms of, like you just said, the way they play. It's how the manager ideally wants to get a good chunk of their goals. He's not the most keen. I know McGregor also scored that shot at the weekend, but the way Ange plays, he doesn't really want guys firing shots from, dead far out or whatever. That sort of cross-based way, the quick balls fizzed in is what he likes to see. I think in terms of just the players you're rhyming off there, even somebody like O'Reilly, who's not scored this season, the manager just wants him to be more clinical, doesn't he? Because he'll been getting frustrated. I know they did win last night, but just obviously the games in like the Champions League, etc., when there was chances to be there, and all right, in those games, you at times you were playing a good team, so even if he does take a couple of chances, maybe wouldn't have guaranteed wins, but he's probably thinking would have been a better chance of winning games if we'd taken some of the chances. So I can understand why that's maybe in the back of his head, still sort of bubbling over, but we know how quality these players can be. I mean, 𝘁𝗆 and O'Reilly were, when they came in last season, I know 𝘁𝗆 fizzled out a wee bit due to how much football he played, but I'll tell you, when he first came in, he was excellent. O'Reilly as well was such an important aspect to winning the league, and for a good chunk of the start of the season, even though they both weren't maybe scoring a lot, a good chunk of the start of this season, they were good as well. So fingers crossed they're going to find a bit of form, and it's maybe just them taking a while to get going after the break.
Tony, before we move on to the inevitable that we've managed to stave off for 22 and a half minutes, the third player that I wanted to single out earlier on was, unsurprisingly, Greg Taylor, because although he was suspect for that Livingston goal, never tucked in enough, and it was his man, all that kind of stuff, when he moved to right back, lest we forget a sight I don't think anybody thought we would see. I just wanted to give him a mention for that, because he obviously is very left-footed, as somebody commented earlier on, his right foot's for standing. But I think he coped well with playing 40 minutes or so at right back. All right, Livingston weren't exactly rampaging down that wing, but when they did try and attack, they did try and kind of target that area, knowing that he was out of position. I suspected, given the options on the bench, that if Ralston went off, that it would be Taylor that 𝘁𝗀𝗆 turned to play right back, with Alexandre 𝘁𝗆 playing in his natural position rather than the other way about in anything. I don't know what you made of it, but I know what you made of it, Tony, because you done the ratings. But it kind of to me, it was kind of like boys' club football rules. If you're stuck for a natural replacement, you turn to the guy who you trust most and will adapt for you in that moment. And for Ange 𝘁𝗀𝗆, that was Greg Taylor.
I think he did all right. I didn't have an issue with him going to right back. As you say, he was kind of targeted, but he coped okay. My thing with last night, I just thought he could maybe have done better at the goal. But then I thought Joe Hart could probably have done better too, possibly.
I think his annoyance was palpable after it.
Yeah, correct. Because such a terrible goal to lose. And then there was a moment in the second half where I think Greg caused a wee bit of consternation with a slack pass. Just right across to nobody, and it landed to a Livingston player, and they get an attack out of nothing. And when the game's tight like that, that's the kind of thing that lapse in concentration that can cost you, at any time. But I thought he was. I gave him a 7, didn't I? So he was steady enough. But there was a couple of instances where you thought, all right, Greg, if you were switched on, or you are the Greg Taylor that we've been used to, then these things wouldn't happen. They would have got round, he would have made the tackle, that kind of thing. So these are, maybe picking faults in him, but I'm not saying he had a bad game. It was just,
I think it's a reflection of the esteem in which he's now held,
Yeah,
that you've not really seen a lot of people mention, because there's a time where before those incidents you're talking about would have been blown out of all proportion.
He would have been a flag.
Twitterati and stuff, and giving him absolute pelters. So
he would have been a
I
flag.
think that's a reflection of how he's
because his general all-round play was fine, actually. You know, those instances apart. Okay, we've got to 25 minutes. Let's do it.
Right. Do you want to ruin Brian Roberts' day?
Yeah.
Do you want to ruin my day? We've also got Anthony Aitken coming in asking if we've done it yet. We've not. You're just in time. And I have several. I have screenshots to put up, unfortunately.
Now, Aidan, what I want to know is, first and foremost, why Nicky Devlin's handball wasn't a penalty. I also want to know why 𝘀𝗶𝘁𝗲's goal was disallowed, but we'll take them in his incidents. Firstly, Nicky Devlin, real Hatate shot, penalty kick.
Did.
Tony's going to disagree with you. Don't be scared, Aidan. Just tell him it wasn't a penalty.
I think it was a difficult one, to be honest. I don't know if it was fully like cut and dry, to be honest. I think there's been more obvious ones throughout the season. The one that I know I don't want to mention too much because it's another one that we discussed quite a lot at the time. But the one at Tynecastle, who I always forget what player it was.
Michael Smith.
Yeah, was it Forrest? I think it was Forrest.
Forrest flicked it, Michael Smith handballed it.
Which was a stone waller if I've ever seen one. But some say.
There you go. I mean, that's what I thought as well. That was when somebody was going to score against you when you were a kid and you became the stand-in goalkeeper. If your goalkeeper had gone AWOL or somebody had rounded the goalkeeper, and you, I mean, all
right. Let's not exaggerate what he done. Right, it hit his elbow, but his arm was no way out from his body. Now this is a rule of it, right? I know this is not that big a screenshot because there's so many there, but with the Devlin one, to me, right, his arm is glued to his side, but you're going to see some quality fence sitting from me over the next 5-10 minutes, by the way. But
all right, okay.
His arm is glued to his side, but the question is, has he leaned into it rather than has he put his arm out? Because he's not put his arm out, but if he's leaned into it, then that would make it a deliberate movement towards the ball. Would you think?
He stopped the ball from going to its intended target with his hand or his part of his arm.
That doesn't matter. A handball's not just touching the ball with your hand doesn't make it a handball. What would make it a handball is what I'm saying. If you think he deliberately moved into it because his arm was out,
he did deliberately move into it. He moved towards it.
So that's different from saying his arm was out because his arm was out.
But to stop it from going to his intended target, which was the goal.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a
penalty. You think it's a penalty, Aidan? Is that in any way, shape what you think? You still think it's a hard decision?
I don't think it's a hard decision. I think it's quite an easy decision.
I don't think it is, Tory. I think it's quite obvious that it is a debatable decision, or we wouldn't be debating it. But
look, I've been quite critical of VAR, how it's been. Not even VAR, sorry. I've been critical of quite a lot of the refereeing decisions this year when they have been poor. The example I highlighted being that Hearts one, with when Forrest put it, it was a clear penalty that day. It could. I'm going to sit in the fence of it as well. It could have been given, but I don't think it was like a clear cut and dry like some of them have been, to be honest.
The thing is, Aidan, right? What I would say is, and this is David Gillespie's comment, gets it on the head for me here, is you can't. Two wrongs don't make it right. Okay, so if one, he's mentioning the Bernabei penalty. Now I still don't think that was a penalty. The Bernabei one that was given, and David Gillespie saying if that was a penalty, then last night should have been. Problem is, I think you could argue neither was a penalty, and that they've got it particularly wrong in the Bernabei one. I think fundamentally, I do think it is a debate. I think it all depends on whether you think he's moved deliberately towards that ball because his arm wasn't out, his arm was at his side.
I think
if he's moved towards it, then it is a penalty.
I think he has deliberately moved towards the ball because he stopped it from going to its intended target, which was the goal. And also then, if you're going to talk about other penalties, I can't for life me understand why Bernabei's was given as a penalty and the Matt O'Reilly one against Ross County was given as a penalty.
The Matt O'Reilly one as well, yeah.
So, that's what's confusing for me because and then the Michael Smith one, as we've alluded to, wasn't given, then I need to go back to school. I'll need to.
I think Simon Donnelly said the same thing.
He did last night, because they're making a mockery of the rules. Because every time you think it's a penalty or an offside or whatever, they then start re-refereeing it or making up their own rules. And my questions about this is, the team that seems to be bearing the brunt of it is Celtic, and you can't.
I agree with, because
you cannot escape that. The team that has been, I hesitate to use the words, but I'll use it, shafted the most by VAR since it was introduction is Celtic. Now nobody can dispute that. Now somebody has, and I say that the very first time we had the discussion, somebody has to come out and explain the rules to me, because I know you've got the IFAB rules out, but now we've got referees giving their own interpretation of these rules. Yeah.
But fundamentally, Tony, that is what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a cut and dry one.
It's not black and white.
That is an interpretation.
They are now giving, they're re-refereeing games and giving interpretations to justify the fact that they're giving decisions against Celtic. Now, nobody can dispute that. And have Celtic got one VAR decision since it came in?
They got a penalty against Livingston that Willie Collum went and checked.
That's right. That was a handball, wasn't it? And 𝘁𝗱𝗁𝗁 missed it. Yeah. And how many have gone against them since it came in?
Yep.
Nearly every goal.
Fundamentally, I agree with you that Celtic have by far paid the most with VAR.
Yeah, no, I agree as well.
And I don't want taking this actual incident, Tony.
And I don't want favours. I want consistency.
No way you can get away from the fact that it is a debatable decision. It's not cut and dry. So I think we need to kind of calm down and stop making it out as if it's cut and dry. But this is where it comes into it for me. It's the lack of consistency.
I've just said that.
I suppose it depends on the referee. I suppose it depends on what referee's interpreting it. But ultimately, unless it's an in and out and an offside, which we'll come to, then it is an interpretation fundamentally. These are the rules. This is what they're thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I agree with you. It would be ideal if you did get what we've talked about before, some sort of VAR report released after the game or whatever, where they say, right, this is what our thought process was, blah, blah, blah. But as I've said before, you're not going to get it. Referees are too much of a protected species to agree to that.
Mm-hmm.
They don't explain anything. So they're not going to start now that VAR's there to prove them wrong, if that's the case. I'm
not disputing that penalty decision last night is something that can be debated, but for me, there is no debate, because I think he makes a motion towards the ball.
Tony, there is a debate. Stop saying that you don't think there's just because it's your opinion doesn't mean there's no debate.
Well, we're having a debate.
We're going to be debating it.
Well, but I still think that it's a clear cut for me.
Aye, for you, so there is a debate. That's what I'm saying.
But what I would say is, and I know obviously some people in the chat, and I've seen have been talking about how the Bernabeu one, etc., and the O'Reilly one. Well, at the time, I didn't particularly think either of them were penalties. So if I'm hoping for consistency to an extent, I'm probably more than I'm expecting from some of the Scottish referees, as maybe they have looked at that and they've felt, well, those were incorrect decisions in hindsight, so we're going to try and apply that to the rest of the games. But
I get where you're coming from, Aidan, but this is where I'm saying, like when I put up David's comment, two wrongs don't make a right. You need to do it on that decision. You can't think, oh well, I gave that or I didn't give that.
I know.
Like I can get where you're coming from, but that doesn't chime with me either. It needs to be in that moment, that decision. It can't be, oh well, when I gave that a couple of weeks ago, so that was wrong, I can't give this now. It should be just that decision. And I realise sometimes it's hard to operate in a vacuum, but that's just the way that it should be.
I'll ask you, Sean, do you still think that the Bernabeu penalty and the Matt O'Reilly penalty were penalties?
No, because I never thought that at the time. I thought both weren't penalties.
Okay. Do you still think the Michael Smith one was a penalty?
I think that was a penalty, right? For the same reason that you think this is a penalty, because I think he moved deliberately towards the ball.
Right.
But then again, his arm was actually out as well, whereas Devlin's was at his side. But this is what I'm saying. It's debatable. There is at some point along the process there's an interpretation. I agree with you. The interpretation so far has gone against Celtic more than it's gone for them.
And I agree with you that they're all debatable, hence why we're having this discussion. I get that.
And we've not even got to Abada yet, remember? We've not even got to Abada yet. So
now, Abada,
right.
There's two things at play here, isn't there?
Couple of things, aye.
A couple of things. The first one being that Turnbull, if that's an intended pass towards 𝘀𝗁, who is in an offside position, but Turnbull's really just helping the ball on, isn't he? So it's not a pass per se, because 𝘀𝗁's coming back from that offside position, isn't he?
Yes, I'm not going to lie, right? It threw me. It massively threw me, this one. I'll put the main, while you're talking, I'll put the main 𝘁𝗱 offside one up on the screen, which is...
And then it's the intention of the Livingston player to intentionally play the ball, isn't it? Because if that's an intentional play of the ball, then it becomes a second phase and 𝘁𝗀 becomes onside, which is why he's rammed it into the net, isn't it? That's
right. Well, on that one on the screen, that's the kind of main offside rule wording, right? 𝘁𝗀 was clearly standing offside when Turnbull flicked the ball on. We know that. That's fine. That doesn't mean that he's offside. Standing in an offside position doesn't mean you're actually offside, right? It depends on what you do from that position. Now, as an aside, by the way, you'll notice on this that there is nothing to be said about whether Turnbull played it deliberately to 𝘁𝗀 or not in these laws, so that almost doesn't matter. He flicked the ball on. That's all you need to know, that kind of thing. So initially, right, I thought because 𝘁𝗀 decided to run towards the ball after coming back on from an offside position, that meant that he had impacted the play and impacted the way the defender was able to play the ball, therefore offside, like the bottom point on the screen, making an obvious action, which clearly impacts on the ability of an opponent to play the ball, right? Now, initially, that's what I thought. However, when I started looking at the 𝘁𝗱 kind of, it's like the facts, it's like the FAQs, do you know what I mean? Like that further down at the end of some of the sections, they've got example scenarios listed below some of the laws. So this was one that they listed as a practical example, right? And that is very small, actually, so I'll read it. Now, an attacking player in an offside position, which in this situation is 𝘁𝗀, runs towards the ball but does not play the ball or prevent the opponent, which is a Livingston defender, from playing or being able to play the ball. What is the referee's decision? And 𝘁𝗱 categorically says it's not an offside offence, so the referee allows play to continue. The attacking player is only penalised if he or she plays the ball or interferes with an opponent. Now, right, are you following me, right? Because I'm reading a lot out here, but that scenario to me applies to 𝘁𝗀, no? The only rationale I can think of for the ref or VAR to overturn that goal is that they watched it back and they deemed 𝘁𝗀 to have interfered with the Livingston player, right? Now, to me, that means I've got to think, right, what does 𝘁𝗱 deem as interfering? So this is so this is it. Interfering with play by touching or passing a ball that was touched by, right? So that doesn't apply. Interfering with an opponent by preventing them from being able to from playing or being able to play the ball by obstructing their line of vision. No, never done that. Challenging an opponent for the ball. No, never done that. Clearly attempting to play a ball which is close when this action impacts on an opponent. No. Making an obvious action which clearly impacts on the ability of an opponent to play the ball. Now, that's the only one I think that they could in any way interpret as the reason. And I think it's very, very harsh because he's still not really near the defender. What's your thoughts, boys?
The defender's just made a hash of a headed clearance. 𝘁𝗀's motion towards him, yeah, but he's nowhere near him. So hence, by the defender making a hash of that, that becomes a second phase, doesn't it? Which renders 𝘁𝗀 onside, and he does what any kind of striker would do in that situation, or forward player, and puts the ball away before asking any questions. The bottom one is, it's tenuous, but that's clearly the one that the referees acted upon. And again,
we think, because again, this has just been left to assumption.
Yeah, because it's the rest of them are pretty cut and dry there. And it was my understanding as well. And as you say, taking Turnbull out of the equation, because he's just played the ball. It's not even a pass. He just helped the ball on.
I suppose Aidan, he thinks the VAR or the referee, whatever one it was, or both, if they are using that last one, then they must be working on the presumption that Livy defender doesn't even try to head the ball back if 𝘁𝗀 doesn't move. But I would say, why would they head the ball back if 𝘁𝗀 was impacting it? Because that's not the direction you want to head it. If you're doing it because the player's impacting your thought process. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it does seem clear that is obviously the one that whoever made the final decision between the two parties for that goal being chopped off. It does seem like that bottom bullet point there is the sort of thing they've went with. It was, it's another one that's is a bit frustrating probably. The fact it took them so long to decide as well, I don't know if there's any sort of time available for how long they actually took to look at it, but it was...
I think it was another 4 minutes or something like that.
I think it was
too
over
long
4 minutes.
anyway, and that to be honest, that is what a lot of people here, Aidan, are saying, that although they disagree with the decision, it's not actually the decision that's annoying them, it's the length of time that people are still taking when they're reviewing this to come to a conclusion. Yeah,
it was just, it seemed to just be ages and ages. 4 minutes, it felt like double that, to be honest. But it's obviously another thing that they're going to have to try and rectify with this VAR model, is when it's a decision like that, fair enough if they need to go and look at the monitor, but getting the referee over at the monitor a lot quicker, because it just... I know it's another thing we've mentioned before, but just the flow of the games. I know Celtic were maybe plodding along a wee bit before that, but the flow of the game just kind of gets completely disrupted, and then leads to you getting whatever it was, 7 minutes or something like that at the end. So,
Anthony there saying, Tony, that the refs should need to disclose their reasoning. As I know I've already said this, but I'm going to go back to it again. Because I watch a lot of basketball, it just seems the obvious thing to me is that you don't need to do it right after the game. You don't need to do it in real time, although I know people would appreciate it. And I've said before, Gary Neville let the cat out of the bag doing in England by saying that the commentary booths can hear what the VAR officials are discussing. I don't know if that's the case up in Scotland. I don't see why it wouldn't be if the game was on Sky. I know that wasn't last night. But in terms of disclosing the reason, I don't really see a problem with that. That's a fair suggestion. It's a fair suggestion that modernises the game slightly, same as using technology does. The NBA uses, I think, it's a final 2 minute report. Any sort of calls that are made within the final 2 minutes that might have a tangible impact on a game's outcome, for instance, goals, obviously with basketball it's a basket and stuff, or fouls, then there is a sort of explanation, a rationale. This is why we took it. They already explain it sometimes on screen and stuff, so they're already ahead of that. But the kind of the silence is what's going to make this torture, basically. The lack of justification. Now I know they've got to justify it to their superiors, but the superiors don't need to justify it to anybody else, which is part of the problem.
We banged on about it in the start when VAR came in, that we needed communication because it helps improve your own understanding. I mean, but every other game, some are having to dig into IFAB.
Aye, I know.
To check the rules. It was ever thus, and we're fed up talking about it. I mean, the manager himself last night was asked a question in VAR when his answer was unequivocal. I made a conscientious decision to say that I'll not talk about VAR from now on in, because he's sick of it. And it just you question your own knowledge of the rules of the game. And now we have referees who I think are refereeing and they don't have full knowledge of the rules of the game. Isn't that what their job is? To know the laws of the game inside out and to be able to make those calls straight away. I think they're now, again, going back to interpretation, we're now re-refereeing football matches on somebody's interpretation of the laws of the game, which you keep flashing up here in black and white. And then it's what do you call it? It's the waters are muddied because it's ambiguous, because we're picking out one of the IFAB rules, the bottom one, which we think the referee is given a decision on, but we'll never ever know because they can't speak and tell us. They don't, whilst we've embraced new technology, we've not embraced the reasoning behind it and telling us why they reach decisions, whether that be in the stadium at a time, which I still think they can do. But it takes an eternity. It took an eternity to reach that decision last night, or it felt like an eternity. And that shouldn't be the case, especially something which is part of the laws of the game, which I think the referees and those in the VAR room should know like the back of their hand. And I get it. And I've said before, I think the officials in this country are woefully inept. They're not fit for purpose. And
that comes back to the lack of full-time refs again, Tony, which I kind of mentioned. I was putting the cart before the horse slightly. I made my peace with it because in terms of kind of trying to advance the game, and VAR was the natural step probably, but to not have full-time officials was, do you know what I mean? It was a bit the wrong way for me.
Yeah.
And I think everybody, Aidan, would you agree that most people, I mean, I was going to say 3 different generations. I'm probably straddling yours, Aidan, but a couple of different age groups in here. I think we all generally agree, and this is across clubs, not just the 3 of us, that the standard of refereeing, thinking how to put this, the standard of refereeing in Scottish football is pretty poor. And I know a lot of people think that in their many leagues, but I think that's a broad opinion, I think, in Scotland. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think the standards are that great. Whether or not them going full time would improve that, we don't know. It's obviously would be a potential idea. I don't want to go back too far in the conversation, but what you mentioned about referees giving an update or justifying decisions at the end of the games, that would be obviously something that I think fans of all clubs would like to see. And like you said, it doesn't need to be like a minute after it or right at the end of the game, like you were saying to do in the NBA. Even if it was like a couple of days later, or say the game's a Saturday, by the Monday they've got to have produced a report or whatever. I just think it would just allow for a wee bit more transparency, and you wouldn't be having to really you could still be having the discussions if you didn't agree with the decision, but you could at least say what the referee's claiming that they were thinking exactly when there was a penalty call, whatever happened. I think that would be quite good, but it's never going to happen, to be honest. But
I suppose my reason for asking that, Tony, was if we're all in agreement that the referees in general, broad terms, weren't the epitome of refereeing standards, as you can see by none of them getting a call up to the World Cup, then are we really that surprised that they're kind of...
No.
I mean, I've tried to figure out how to say this without sounding daft, right? But is it that surprising that VAR in Scotland is only as good as the people that are interpreting it? Basically, is what I'm saying. Does it actually surprise you as much as it's obviously annoying us? Does it surprise you that this all taken in conjunction with each other? No full time refs. VAR rolled out before there's full time refs, and then the general perception of the standard of refereeing has all come together, and VAR has so far caused more issues than it's solved.
Perfect storm, isn't it? We've spoken before, and we said all we wanted was consistency. Is that right? And decision making and fairness, not favouritism or favours, just consistency and fairness. And I think every supporter of every club wants that, and they've seen nothing like it since VAR has been introduced. And every club, supporters, fans, team management team, they'll have a litany of decisions where they feel they've been hard done by VAR. It can't all be wrong, can they? It can't all be wrong, and it can't. And as you say, there was one weekend where it wasn't just restricted to a Celtic game. I think there was the 6 games. There was a VAR issue, wasn't there? A contention. So it's happening to every team, isn't it? So we watch Celtic all the time. That's our job to do that. So we focus specifically on Celtic. But I want to make the point that every club, every week, has an issue with VAR and decisions going against them. And it goes back to, as you say, the quality of people that are employed to run VAR, administer VAR. And you made a great point that it was kind of the horse had bolted because we haven't appointed full-time officials. And then we get this hiding behind teething problems. As Anne said himself, VAR's been in Australia for the best part of 5 or 6 years in Australian football, and it's been in various leagues. So why is it so bad in Scotland? Why is it so contentious in Scotland? Why is it every other game we're talking about it? And like the manager, I'm getting annoyed about it, talking about it. But it's happening every other game.
Aidan, Ange said before the break, a couple of weeks before the break, which remember they've had 5 weeks to try and iron out any teething issues, but he said it was the length of time. Basically what a lot of the commenters have said today, it was the length of time that it was taking that was annoying him more than anything else, because he says, right, the decision's the decision, we'll deal with it, we'll overcome it, that kind of thing, whether he thinks it was right or wrong. But it was the length of time. Added onto that, the way that Celtic want to play their football, the high intensity, we never stop, all that kind of stuff. You're getting a 4-minute stop, which means the opponent gets a 4-minute breather as well. That all plays into it. But that phrase that Tony said there, Aidan, teething problems, the phrase I'm using where it's inconsistent, it's interpretation, it's subjectivity and stuff, it's all a different way, is it not? of saying that there are still problems with the quality of officials in Scotland, and the introduction of VAR is ultimately, again, only as good as the people interpreting it.
Yep, I can completely agree with that, and the fact that you've picked up on that obviously none of them are at the World Cup shows you that it's not just people in Scottish football, fans of Scottish teams that are thinking that the referees are maybe a bit below standard in terms of the overall officiating. You know, UEFA, or FIFA I should say, sorry, are also seeing that as well. And yeah, it is, you are kind of at the mercy of the quality of the referee, or how they are sort of, and how good they are at their job, even with VAR, because if they're not, I don't want to say not up to date in the rules, that's maybe unfair, but if they're not sort of putting them in place correctly, maybe even then there's nothing you can really do, even if somebody is going to look at it, if they've got a billion cameras to look back on it, if they're not implementing rules properly, it's not going to matter. And look, we mentioned this when it came in the VAR, that we knew there was going to be plenty of discussions about it, because the officiating standard isn't the best in Scotland. It was not going to be plain sailing, even in countries where, at least on paper anyway, you would think the refereeing is better. It took VAR some time to sort of be implemented, but at the time, it was probably the caveat was, well, that was it really coming in for the first time. If I'm going back to 2018 World Cup, when it was first introduced in the Champions League final, which I think was 2018, 2019 or something like that, round about then, maybe just slightly after, a few years ago. We were saying that even then, that was a more competent referees, there was struggles. So I had no doubt it was going to be maybe farce is the right word, to be fair. I had no idea it was going to be at times. at times it was going to be frustrating, and that's exactly how it's planned out. There was a real bit of respite in the Aberdeen game. When Celtic beat Aberdeen 1-0 on Saturday, that I don't think there was really any contentious VAR decisions that I can think of, and it wasn't really anything that I didn't.
Because it was just a training exercise for most of the game.
Probably because Aberdeen were just chasing the ball, so there wasn't really any VAR decisions to be made. But in my head, I was hoping, or maybe we'll go a few games, but of course the next game after it.
We had a World Cup final on Sunday where a referee clearly saw a dive in the last minute of extra time for a penalty kick. That's what he's employed to do, and he got plaudits for it. How many refs would have given a penalty in that situation?
At least it might have been checked. That's the thing. But I think we're on the verge of doing a Roy Keane. That's his job. That's his job.
Yeah. Praising the postman for delivering your letters, that kind of stuff.
There is an element of that, though, Tony, that can't be denied. That there is an element of that. They'll say that they don't get praised for all the times that they get it right. That's true, but you are meant to get it right. So,
and VAR
at the same time, no praise is not being brought up as the praise in itself, because a good ref should be seen and not heard, that kind of thing. But
I want to bring up this comment as well, which I thought was shocking at the time. Burnaby's booking last night is a shambles. Easton Hope's taking an absolute dive, and Burnaby's copped a booking for that, which could rule him out later on if talking up procedure and stuff like that. And again, what's the assistant see? Surely the assistant should see that and say to the ref, by the way, actually, that didn't happen. He never clattered into him, Or if you're up with play anyway, you should see it. I mean, the ref was that up with play at one point last night. He got in Callum McGregor's road, didn't he? He's going to have
he was in a couple of people's roads, because he got around the boo.
Yes, so I get back to that. I just think that they're incompetent. But it'll drive you crazy, and you will talk about VAR ad infinitum at this minute, and it's.
Sorry, Sean Malloy's just saying that the linesman was on, or the assistant referee was on the other side. Fair enough. I must admit I didn't notice. Fair enough. But on the subject of assistants, and I don't want to, we're already nearly at an hour, so I don't want to keep going on about this, but it does kind of, when you're saying about the assistants should spot stuff, head knocks in particular, that game before the winter break, when the lines, not only was the referee there and didn't blow, but the assistant referee was within yards of it, never had any reaction whatsoever to a head knock and different things. So it's more than just VAR decisions here. There is a general concern.
Yeah, correct, of the standard of officiating in this country, but we keep highlighting it, but we keep having the same debates, guys, don't we?
Yeah. Unfortunately, because I've saved all these. There's a wee presenting menu that I can save things in here, and I've just got all the IFAB stuff saved in it because I know I'm going to need it again at some point.
So you called it ABFAB, IFAB.
IFAB, aye.
It's frightening, but that's nearly
we
an
never
hour.
even got to. I mean, we're nearly an hour, Tony. We were actually going to use the VAR thing to kind of move into talking about Alex Postecoglou's post-match comments, but we might need to move all that tomorrow now. But it kind of, I mean, just quickly, we could, I suppose, just bring it to the actual hour and then we'll call it there. But his post-match comments were not happy, Tony.
Not happy.
Some of the stuff that he said, it wasn't.
Yeah.
He also hinted at changes for the weekend, which you said, I think will be hard pushed to get 11 out of 11 this week. But I kind of interpreted it, Aidan, as a kind of a wee bit of a G up post-match presser, in that I don't think he liked that the foot came off the gas slightly in the second half. So he almost started his pre-St Johnstone talk a wee bit early to make sure that they don't do the same against them.
Yeah, I kind of viewed it as something similar, to be honest, and that suits me, to be fair. I want him to be sort of never really fully happy what he's seen in the park, because that's how you're going to get improvement, to be honest. I mean, we've seen Ange before. I know there was a few times last night he wasn't happy when the ball was getting passed back, and it reminded me of I don't know if you remember the clip against Rafe Rovers last season.
Welsh.
Yeah, I won't repeat the exact words he used, but he wasn't happy, to be fair, in terms of what was going on the pitch that day. So yeah, that is probably him just maybe getting in the players' heads ahead of the St Johnstone game, saying, standards have got to be better, and if you aren't putting on best performances, I've got somebody in the majority of positions, with the exception of probably right back, that right now, because of the situation, that can come in and play ahead of you. So you need to sort of buck up your ideas, which is fine. I'm all right with that, to be honest.
Tony, you can hear that in Joe Hart's as well. He spoke with he spoke with the manager's voice in terms of
he did.
It was not understandable at all. We play every second, every minute. That much has been made clear to us. And I was thinking to myself, well, it's just been made doubly clear about 5 minutes before that.
That's the manager talking, isn't it? Exactly, yeah. And I think that's a good old-fashioned put up the backside, Sean. Where I think going back to the time, there's a great clip with Jock Stein talking where he says he used to drum it into his players that they could lose every game to any opponent and not to take anything for granted. And this was the Lions he was talking about, the most successful Scottish club side ever. And there's a clip of him saying, I used to tell my players that the fear of losing every game against any opponent, should be enough to drive you on to bring everything you've got to the table and not let your standards slip. And I think there was a wee touch of that last night where Angie's just saying, look, don't hit any kind of comfort zone. It won't be allowed. You were 2-0 up in that game in control. You lost a sloppy goal and then lost your way completely. And had it not been against a team like Livingston, who showed no real gumption to get forward in the second half, or over the whole piece, then you could have came a cropper against a team who maybe thought, sensed a wee bit of vulnerability about you. And I think that was, again, going back to what I said there, kind of a warning shot over the bow to think, and as Aidan said, I've got players that will come in. And then when he was saying there'll be changes, I think that was kind of, a cage rattler to certain players. And I include Jota and the likes of that as well.
Yeah.
You say, you're not going to bring that twice in a row. You were brought to be better than that. So you might find Jota rotated on Saturday.
Potentially, yeah.
Potentially
Look forward to your predicted 11. Just the whole B team.
Yeah, but not to say to even I use this, well, there's no real star players as they say in the team, but personality players say, no, you're here for a reason, and that's to perform.
Yep.
I won't put up with that, and I will rotate you if you're going to give me that. And I think Jota, the past couple of performances have been out of sorts, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him rotated, and also for the manager to say, this is me telling you there will be changes, and I won't be afraid to axe you or drop you or rotate you from the squad because of what you served up the past couple of games.
Yep. Rob Piemonte saying changes guaranteed. Ange basically said that after the game. There's a couple of questions which we will deal with tomorrow, I think, properly, but I'll flash them up just to give you a wee teaser. Patrick McLaughlin saying, will Ange go to a back three if Ralston's out? It's always a chance. He did it last Boxing Day, which would almost
Boxing
be
Day
a mirror
against St Johnstone.
1 year, Boxing Day, St Johnstone the year before. But that was mostly due to a few injuries, COVID and different things. There was a lot of players not able to make it. Joey Dawson started up front, or that kind of thing. So maybe the one injury won't be enough, but he then comes back in and says, or is Taylor at right back? I don't think it would be Taylor at right back. Again, during the match, as I said, boys football club rules and all that, turn to the guy that you trust, that you know will do their utmost to make sure they adapt to it. I think that was Taylor in that moment. But I think, given if Juranovic is still away and maybe carrying a knock, Alistair Johnston can't play, what's the harm in calling up someone from the B team?
Yeah, no harm in that.
Probably it might not be him specifically, but I really like the aggression of Josh Didi in pre-season. It might not be him. You'd need to check who actually plays religiously at right back, because he does get games there, but I don't know if he's the consistent choice, I admit. So I would have no problem though. If not situations like that, when do you call up someone from the B team?
Of course. And I also think as well, with Ibrox round the corner, Aidan, I think he's just sort of saying, right, you know, you go to Ibrox in a few days' time. Who's ready? You know, who's got that hunger? Who's got that desire? Who's going to play themselves into contention for that 11? You know, because you can pick from a plethora of players, but he wants to know who's hungry for it in terms of it, and not hit that kind of comfort zone that I was talking about earlier, and think they can just drift and, you know, and be part of the team and others will carry them. No, the whole team carries themselves. And as you said, Sean, Joe Hart was talking about that, wasn't it? Just kind of unacceptable.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Ange will have it in the back of his head thinking about the Rangers game. I know we'll never say that publicly, and to an extent it is every game one game at a time, but I'm sure he'll be thinking about, you know, based off even these first two performances, despite there being another two games before the Rangers game, isn't it? Home to St Johnstone.
Yeah, St Johnstone.
But I think he'll be thinking about who can come in. Obviously, the right back option will be something he's definitely thinking about. I know Juranovic could potentially be back available by then if this knock isn't too bad that he's got, but he'll be thinking about that across the team, really, in terms of who he thinks he's got the desire, the work rate, etc., that's going to want to come in and give their all for that game, because we know how important it is. But just need to wait and see, and hopefully the performances will improve a wee bit over the next two games.
Tory, that's a good. We're basically doing the preview now, but Stephen Welsh at right back, Gary McDowell says if he has recovered and he is fit, I wouldn't be surprised if it was him, because he played right back before while on loan at Morton. He played right back in that cup game for a wee while. It very well might be him. Antonios saying Jens to right back. He's played there before. I remember looking at him up before he signed and looking at his player profile. He has played there before, but it was only for, I want to say, part of one game for Lausanne Sport. So
that was my first thought.
He was on the bench last night, so presumably it was a choice between playing Jens at right back and keeping Taylor in situ, or giving Bernabei time at left back and asking Taylor to do a job at right back, and he picked that, which suggests to me maybe he won't pick Jens at right back. Yeah,
possibly. I think this is a world record for the pod today, guys, in terms of the time. 1 minute and 3 seconds. There you go. We'll save some for tomorrow, I think, eh?
Yeah, I think so. I will. A bumper special. I'm going to be putting this on Twitter.
Bumper special, indeed. Now, guys, I'll just draw your attention to the ticker tape running along the bottom, of course. Subscribe to the Celtic Way. It's the Merry Christmas deal, December deal, festive deal. You support top quality journalism, covering the club you love. It's £1 for 2 months of full access to everything that's written on the website. Or if you want, you can get 25% off the yearly price, which takes it to £26. Excellent value. And all you have to do is hit that button, www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. That's www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. Guys, that has been excellent. Really loved that today. It was good.
It was good.
Top discussion. Sean.
Kaiser, it's Christmas. Do another hour, lads.
Indeed. Excellent, Sean. Tremendous stuff. Aidan, thanks for your contribution as well. Loved that.
Cheers,
guys, thanks for all the comments. Hope you enjoyed that. It makes me like the extended format. It was more by accident and design. But there you go. We don't know if we'll do an hour every day. We know you might want it, but thank you.
A bumper VAR special, achieving nothing, sadly. Apologies, Frank. We do try.
Good old Frank. Yes, indeed. But guys, we'll be back tomorrow. 23rd of December, counting down the days till Christmas. But well done, Wombat. Thanks very much. Appreciate that. Appreciate all the subscribers and listeners and viewers. You couldn't do it without you, and we enjoy the interaction. Hope you enjoy today. As I think David Coleman should be commentating this show with WR flashing in a new world record. But there you have it. But no, thanks for your contribution. I enjoyed that today. It was a good one.
Yep.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.